It's going on live stream, people, so be warned.
Yes. Okay, we start the meeting. Welcome to the inaugural meeting of the Planning and Climate Change Committee. That's great to be able to say that, isn't it? And we'll start with the karakia. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Ki mā kina kina ki utai, ki mā tautau ki kai, e hi e ki ana ti atakura, he tio, he huka, he heihu, ti hei moriwa. Oh, thank you. And we have any apologies from the, I assume we had one from the Mayor Broughton. And Deborah Heston, or Councillor Heston, is supposed to be joining us online. Do you know if she's there yet? Okay. So maybe have her down as an apology for now. Okay, identification of any extraordinary business? Nobody? Excellent. Any conflicts of interest? No, and we've got no public forum. So, Chairperson's report. So I have the absolute pleasure to be the chair of this committee and will be ably assisted by Deputy Chair Councillor Glidden, who is sitting right along there. Firstly, I want to mention that our thoughts go out to all those who have been affected by the significant weather events of the last few weeks and the weeks, months, years ahead to be back to a normal life, whatever that may be. As a council, through LGNZ's Adopt a Community program, we have adopted Te Rāwhiti Gisborne District Council, and all money fundraisers through various collections events will be donated to them. And the first one is Selwyn Sounds, which is on this Saturday, where we will have collectors there. There'll be councillors, council staff and civil defence volunteers. And thanks to Councillor Dean for coordinating that. It is very sad to see the devastation but it also seemed to have prompted conversations about recovery, resilience, climate change mitigation and adaptation. We here have not been immune to flooding events and other natural disasters either. Future planning of Darwin is one of the few different work streams listed in Mr. Harris's report later in the agenda, where we'll be looking at those issues. I think there's no better time than now to be strategically planning how us, with our communities, can work together to future-proof our district with our community, future our district for us and those who come after us. These are also conversations that we have to have at regional and central government levels. As has already been mentioned by others at previous meetings, there will potentially be crossover with the other committees that are running parallel to this one. And one crossover has already happened as a result of an item on the Transport and Infrastructure Committee meeting on the 15th of February. That is where I brought up about the loss of trees from some of our infrastructure projects, such as footpath installation. So I requested a look at the loss of trees and whether we have a policy of replanting. Plus, we also need to look at our tree canopy cover. Otherwise, our streetscapes, for example, are getting particularly hot. And I would like a report on that through this committee, which was already signalled at that other committee meeting. I also tried to find our climate change agreement policy yesterday, and thanks to Ms. Davil for finding the information at late notice for me, which I have circulated to you all. So basically showing what council has done over the last few years regarding climate change and what we have agreed to. So the first one was the local government leaders climate change declaration by the mayors, which was signed in 2017. And Sam Broughton, mayor, who's still currently the mayor, was the signatory to that from representing our council. More recently, Selwyn District Council in December 2020 approved our climate change policy. And if you had time to have a look, you will see that that was with being put in place 2 years ago is currently, it says on the policy, is due for review now. So I want that to be put on our work program as well for this committee going forward. We'll state in the policy that climate change response forms an integral part of council's decision-making process. So, and that's quite good that we have now specifically a committee that covers climate change as part of its responsibilities. And that's my report. Thank you. Is anyone who wants to make any comments? You want to move my report. Thank you, Councillor Lyle. Does anyone want a second? Thank you, Councillor McInnes. All in favour? Aye. Anyone against? No, that's carried. Thank you. And sorry, my computer has just gone to sleep. Oh, so you were doing those. We've now got the next set of reports. So the adoption of the terms of reference, and Mr. Harris will be covering that.
Morning, committee members. There's a number of procedural reports, and you would have heard David speak to these at the previous committee meetings a couple of weeks ago. So I don't intend to spend a lot of time over them. The first one is the adoption of the terms of reference, and I'll take that as read. Just one point on the adoption of the terms of reference. The terms of reference mention climate change in a number of places, but it doesn't go on to mention climate change adaptation. Sorry, it mentions climate change adaptation. It doesn't mention the word mitigation. I think that's an omission. Mitigation refers to basically addressing greenhouse gases at their source, and I think it needs to be added to the terms of reference. So with the committee members' approval, I suggest that wherever climate change adaptation is mentioned in the terms of reference, that the words and mitigation are also added to those terms of reference. With that amendment, that's open for discussion, I guess.
Is there anyone who wants to have anything to mention about the terms of reference? Elizabeth?
Yeah, I'd just like a bit more detail about that, please, because that's just the one line of it that could have quite a big effect on businesses and the people in the community.
So most discussion around climate change refers to mitigation as well as adaptation. And as I said, mitigation in terms of climate change refers to action to reduce greenhouse gases in terms of a response to climate change. Adaptation refers to things like changing floor levels to address rising sea level and floodwaters. So I think it is a clear omission that mitigation is not mentioned in the terms of reference. Any response to climate change would normally include addressing greenhouse gases at their source, or at least monitoring those and having some idea of what impact they may have on climate change. I think it's just a clear omission.
Mm-hmm. Councillor McInnes.
Yeah, I'd just like to support adding mitigation to the terms of reference, because basically if we don't mitigate, then the adaptations have to get harder. So it's much better to include mitigation and do that as much of that as possible now, so that we don't have to spend quite so much time and money on adaptation. Thank you.
Do you have something extra you want to add?
Yes, I was just wondering if there could be, I'd like to receive a full breakdown of what the mitigation involves, because I don't have a full understanding on it, and I just am aware of putting a clause into something or changing something without having the full scope of the relevance to that.
My understanding is what we're doing now is talking about the by putting mitigation in, it leaves it open for us to discuss that in future papers that might come to this committee. So I would think the questions that you're raising are probably better placed when actual mitigation things come to the committee that we are talking about. I'm not aware if anyone else has any comments, but that would be my understanding.
Chairperson, I could it's up to the committee if they want a full report or not. I don't think it's warranted, but I could send around a number of examples of mitigation measures that are taken across different organisations and institutions, so that might give the committee member a better understanding of what we're talking about. Would that be of use?
Councillor Lyle?
I'd support the inclusion of the wording. I don't believe there needs to be a report. I think it's very plain to see. And I'm happy to move the terms of reference with the changes to the wording.
Councillor Glidden?
I agree that the term mitigation needs to be included, and then it leaves us open for interpretation and discussion further into the work program.
Well, thank you. Is there any other? Oh, you want to second it? Thank you.
I'll second. Councillor Lyle.
Is there anyone else who wants to make a comment regarding mitigation? So we have a mover and seconder for adding mitigation. And I put this to, I've just been informed that Councillor Hassan has joined our meeting. Welcome, Deborah. So we have changed, Councillor Hassan, have you read the discussion that we have added the addition of the word mitigation as required for the terms of reference? We've done climate change adaptation, but it hasn't always had mitigation written with it. I'm not sure whether you can hear us, but we're just going to the vote now. So this is with the addition of the word mitigation as required being changed in this. Everyone can tell me who's in favour. Say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Do you want that recorded, Councillor Monk? Okay, thank you. So that is passed, and we'll go on to the next report.
So the next report is a pretty straightforward procedural report. It's on adoption of the model standing orders, and I'll leave that that report as being read. Discussion.
Sorry, Grant, did you want to have a discussion on that?
The discussion is the same as last time, just
So you
more information rather than previous. I mean, I thought that would carry through to all the terms of reference rather than us having to bring it up every single time.
okay,
We've already
so
decided this at previous meetings.
Councill's moved it. Are you happy to second it?
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
with that amendment. I think everyone's already agreed that
Yeah.
in terms of references.
So all in favour? Against? Carried. So the same thing can be said for the code of conduct, which is the next one. So we just the same as what we've had with the other committees. So we have a mover, Councillor seconder, Councillor Dean, all in favour? Against? Carried. Now, the adoption of the meeting schedule. We have a seconder. Any discussion on this? All in favour? Against? Carried. Group manager report.
Thank you, Nicole. I have a report here, a number of recommendations for them. This report is for your information. I do ask for a number of directions from the committee in terms of membership of committees and just an update on some of the work that we're doing. So first of all, I'd just like to introduce my leadership team, the heads of the Regulatory Department, Building, Head of Strategy and Policy, and Head of Resource Consent. So perhaps if I could ask Susan just to come to the top table, introduce herself. She'll be well known to most, if not all, and Susan can talk about what she's up to this year, priorities, opportunities and challenges.
Just bear with me while I get my glasses sorted. Hi everyone, so most of you know me already. My name's Sue Atherton. I'm the regulatory manager in the growth and development team. Now, background on me. So my background way back when started off in management accounts and then led to fraud investigation, which I did probably for about 15 years before we emigrated to New Zealand. I've been with Selwyn District Council for about 6 years now, starting off ground level, came in as compliance officer. It was a small team. There was just 2 of us, and that's grown now. Now I'm the regulatory manager. So it's a really interesting role. What I do covers managing a number of teams now, and I've had to list them because there's quite a few here. So we deal with animal control. There's the regulatory compliance, monitoring. They're doing the enforcement side. That also covers parking and all bylaw issues as well, and RMA issues. We also cover food and health, environmental health, house no, noise control, alcohol licensing. And that probably involves the teams of about 40 people all in, including contractors. Going forward, I think it's important to recognise some of the challenges we've had as a council, and they've really come about through rapid growth. Now, we have got a really growing district, and the number of cases have grown about, in the last 5 years, I worked out to be about 200% increase. And we're getting an ever increasing level of expectation from the public in what we do. So that's proved to be quite challenging. And it's balancing those expectations with taking a solutions-based approach to what we do. To give you monitoring as well, we do monitoring of resource consent conditions, and that's a preventative measure to help aid compliance with all the rules. going forward, we've got some really interesting opportunities. There's so much variety in what we do, and with being a rapidly growing district, as well as the challenges of the growth, also provides us with an opportunity to look at things in fresh eyes and going forward and how we can do things differently. So, and that was pretty much short and succinct what I do. If anybody has any questions, try to keep it under 5 minutes for you. No questions?
Yes, so last year you had an increasing number of investigations and complaints to do.
Yeah.
Is that still increasing, or have they sort of tapered off a bit?
No, the case numbers are growing, and they're growing quite significantly, and they're growing in complexity as well. So what we were dealing with 5 years ago would have been much, still equally important, but lower in the risk matrix of things. So it could have been signage and smaller issues. And we've really worked hard as a district clearing that up. And now we're seeing the more challenging issues that are taking a little bit more time to deal with, but we've got a lot more experience, and we're dealing with them really, really well.
And what would you call a challenging issue?
That could involve changes in legislation, so that changes continually. It's the cross-disciplinary issues, so we may have to work with other organisations such as ECAN or cross-boundary issues. The expectations of the public, so we've got a number of people who've moved in from cities, for example, and will have a different expectation of what the council will deliver and how we'll resolve the issues. So what might seem a lower scale issue to one person can be really significant for somebody else. And it's trying to juggle all of those cases equally, placing the same importance. And it's all about finding solutions for everybody.
Thank you. I know I've had to direct a few your way. Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
So, Sophie? Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to you and your team. Everybody around here is busy, but I get that you guys have to deal with some interesting issues. And I was wondering how you found it. Things like Snap, Send, Solve, have they been a positive force, or is that adding more of the work? I mean, obviously, yeah, how's it been with that? Has it made it better or worse? And are we keeping up with the demand?
Yeah. And a good question. Snap, Send, Solve is a fantastic resource, and for the public, we've actively encouraged people to use it. It's not so good for parking issues and something that you need addressing immediately, and we still encourage people to ring council, even out of hours, for bigger issues. But it's a great tool that people can use on the go if they don't want to ring in, and it captures the information in real time and the geographic location, and that provides us with a lot of information. We've probably seen a growth in the number of issues coming about through Snap, Send, Solve, and when they do promotions, it's good if we get a little bit of knowledge first on that, because we suddenly get 300 litter complaints. But no, it's a great tool.
Shane?
Thank you, Chair Tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you very much, Sue, for your report and your briefing on the complexities of which you deal with some of the perhaps indiscretions and the challenges that come through from our district. Through my journey and through experience, there's been a number of occasions where we've been contacted by members of the public that are having challenges or going through challenges at certain points of the time. And my involvement as a councillor has added further complexity to that issue. If there is particular interest from particular parties within perhaps a ward, would it be possible to be given a heads up if it is looking like increase?
Yeah. Actually, yeah, we have to balance online getting back really quite a bit. We do get some complex and finding ones. We do try and resolve them for all parties from the outset, but there will on occasion be ones, and we'll try and be a bit more proactive, I think, on it with sharing what we can to you aware. But if anybody's got any questions, we can't go to
Just wanted to ask if Citizens Bureau are going to be able to be a bit of a middle ground to help some of the people with the paperwork, that because a lot of people struggle obviously with the council paperwork for consents and things. Do you see them as being a helpful tool?
Yeah, that could be. But as I said, we do try and take a solutions-based approach, and we've done that from the moment I set foot into the role, in that we're mindful that different people need different levels of help, and it's about preventing the issue, resolving concerns, and trying to stop it happening again in the future. And some people need a little bit of extra assistance, and we're happy to provide direction on that, and we'll continue to do so. So yeah, any help for people in becoming compliant is brilliant.
Thanks, Sue. And can I get Vanessa to come to the table, please? Vanessa's the building manager, and we probably will rename that title to head of building in terms of getting consistent with the rest of the team.
Well done. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Vanessa Mitchell. I'm the building manager and have been in that role since mid-2016. Bit of background, I started out in architectural drafting and did 10 years in different firms in Christchurch, covering both residential and commercial work. I then joined Selwyn District Council as a processing officer back in 2002. So I've seen quite a bit of change over the 20 years that I've been here with council. Had 5 different roles within the building team. And it's fair to say the growth over that period has been huge. We've gone from a team that I joined of about 10 to 15 staff up to one of the biggest teams in council now, with just over 50 staff reporting into me. Our main work is, no surprise, new builds out there in the community, doing the building consenting and inspection work. But we also have a number of other aspects that we're responsible for under the Building Act. So there are things like monitoring earthquake-prone buildings and ensuring that building owners either strengthen or demolish those buildings within the required timeframe. There's ongoing safety inspections of residential swimming pools. So to do that work, we've got a building compliance team that sits within our unit. They actually work really closely alongside Sue's team. And that's because at times we have to work together and figure out which is the best piece of legislation to address the issue. In terms of the next year, a few areas of focus for us. So given we issue building consents, we are a building consent authority under the Act. And that means we have an biannual accreditation process that we go through. So in October this year, we'll be expecting IANZ, which is International Accreditation New Zealand, to come in and do the re-accreditation of the BCA. So when they do that, they look at our systems and processes, make sure we're following them. And if they see any issues, they raise either serious non-compliances or general non-compliances and give us a time frame in which we need to address those. But I'm pleased to say, since accreditation was introduced, every year we've got better and better with less general non-compliances and that being raised. So really proud of the work the team do to keep us on track there. Last year, we also went through a TA or Territorial Authority review with MB. So they came in to look at those functions and gave us a report with a few corrective actions associated with those as well. Some of those are around processes and systems that just need a bit of tweaking. So the team are currently working on those with a view to having the final results delivered back to MB in June this year. Another thing which will crop up at some time during the year is Building Act reform. No surprises, they've looked at 3 waters, they've gone down the RMA reform route, and Building Act is next cab off the rank. So far, the information we've received is similar themes, ensuring that Treaty of Waitangi, etc., is addressed by the legislation, and looking at how they can make the consenting system more effective and streamlined for customers. Other items of interest in the building area for the year, Annually, we've been running a training cohort. We've been bringing between 4 and 6 new recruits into the industry, training them up in the role. That's been a really successful way for us to keep resourcing over the years, particularly with the market pressures that we've had. So we're just looking at the moment at shaping what this year's intake might look like. It's fair to say there's been a little bit of a downturn in workload this year, so we just need to bear that in mind when we look at what that training cohort looks like moving forward. And the other item, just in regard to the flooding up north, we've reached out to all the North Island councils to say to them, well, we can't put boots on the ground to help with rapid assessments. We're here to support their teams in BAU, fast-tracking repair consents and allowing them to give their staff a rest when the time permits. So as of yesterday, I've just signed a memorandum of understanding with Hastings District Council. They've got consents in the commercial arena extending out to 71 days on the statutory clock. So they're really hopeful that we can help them get things back on track there. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Grant?
While wanting to help our people in the North Island, I just want assurance that it won't delay any consenting for our own residents here, because that's you look across the fence at our neighbour at Christchurch, they're getting a bit of jip about the timeliness of their consent. So is that going to be a problem for us?
Absolutely understand your question, given that our statutory performance has not been great over the last 12 months. So with the downturn in consent numbers coming in, we're now addressing our consents in under 20 working days. There are still a number of consents sitting in the system that were processed last year where RFI hasn't been responded to. So there are still a number that are pulling that stat down, but we're back up to 67% at the moment. And yeah, we certainly won't be compromising on our consents to help others. At the moment, commercial is still quite buoyant and our commercial team is busy, but the residential team is actually quite quiet at the moment. So what we've been doing, as well as reaching out to others to see if we can help them, is also trying to accelerate some training in that space.
And then committee at the end of this meeting.
We could do, if you're requesting it.
I just want to ask a question in a similar vein in committee, if it's all right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Bob?
Yeah, with the time of the 20 days, how do you see that being in the future as far as that staffing goes? Is it going to reduce, or is it going to stay about as it is? Or
The timeframe always fluctuates depending on the volumes of jobs coming in. We can't control, obviously, when customers are going to lodge. March is historically our biggest month of the year, and that's generally because March, April, we get a lot of solar fuel heater applications. In terms of, if you're talking, are we going to maintain staff numbers where they are currently? At the present time, yes. We're looking at how we utilise those resources to do some other work while they're quiet. Yeah.
Malcolm?
Yeah, Vanessa, I can understand. I know that numbers quietened down over the December, January period. Are they lower than they were last year? You're saying, just how big is the drop off in new building?
At the moment, it's between 20 and 30%. So March will really be, I guess, the stake in the ground to tell us what the industry is actually doing.
Thank you.
Can I just follow up on that?
Yeah, just, is it relating to what Malcolm just said?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, well, yes, please, thanks. Yeah, you can go.
Oh, sorry,
Elizabeth.
So you just very quickly said that industry standard, maybe I misheard it. Is that consistent with the industry standard? In terms of the 20 to 30% reproduction, is that consistent with what the rest of New Zealand's?
It's varying across the country. The likes of Waimakariri, their consent numbers have just fallen off a cliff. They've got to go back to 2008 to see numbers as low as what they're currently receiving. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
I
appreciate
it. Elizabeth?
Hi, I'm just, we were talking about mitigation and adaptation earlier. Given those are going to be key themes moving forward. Are you seeing that it's going to bear a big change on consent regulations?
Yes, it will. So we're already seeing through the end of last year a number of changes around energy efficiency, so requiring better thermally rated windows, increased insulation levels, which are starting to push towards increased framing thicknesses. As we move forward, part of the Building Act reform will be focusing strongly around climate change as well. So it is going to be constantly moving over the next 12 months at least. And I guess, while they're trying to simplify the consenting system, these things actually add levels of complexity, which sort of take away any time savings they create for us at the moment. Shane?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In regards to earthquake-prone buildings in the district, at least in has a few of those within its looking in there. What's the long-term plan for mitigation, I guess, of those buildings, even if they are privately owned, and what does that sort of pathway look like? I guess at a high level, a lot of responsibility falls on the owner, but how long can they remain at a level of risk, still operating as a public, I guess, business?
Yeah, good question. So the earthquake-prone legislation requires any earthquake-prone building in the district to have a notice posted on it. So we go around and monitor that those notices remain in place. We've got about 44 buildings across the district at the moment that are earthquake-prone. They have till 2035 to either effect strengthening work or demolish their buildings. Now, when we first put those notices up a couple of years ago, we had something like 80 buildings. So over time, they're gradually getting addressed. But as we move closer to 2035, we're going to have to start making some decisions around if building owners are not going to effect repairs, do we then step in and use our enforcement powers to actually demolish buildings or that. But what we are trying to do as much as possible is keep in touch with building owners every year, remind them of their obligations, let them know the door's open for them to come and talk to us about how they can actually start some work on their building and work with us to achieve a good result for the community. Thanks. Thanks, Vanessa.
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa. Can we have Robert Luff, Head of Strategy and Policy? Good morning, all. So a bit of my background. So I started at Council about six and a half years ago as a strategy and policy planner, then moved into the team leader position of that team, and now into my current role recently. So we'll take a full work program that every single thing is doing a lot more detail on the 5th of April to this committee. But like I said, a snapshot of what we're up to is in the strategy space, who's led up by Ben Beard as a new team leader. We've got the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan, which is out for engagement at the moment. Also the Future Selwyn strategy, which we're trying to roll out, which effectively is a one strategy across council to try to get that alignment of direction. And as part of that is also the area plans, spatial plans for all of our urban towns of the district. Into the policy space, which is currently has a vacancy for a team lead position. Main projects is a proposed district plan and variation to that plan. We're looking at hearings for the proposed district plan ending in around about April, and variation hearings over May. So we'll have a decision to council by the 20th of August of this year. On the private plan change front, these are largely coming to an end. Still a few working through the process, and we have 4 at appeal as well. The big issue for that team will be RM reform, and we'll know more about that in the near future. With an environmental team as well, which is led by Andrew Stanton. The big projects there is the sound biodiversity strategy, freshwater improvement projects, SMA mapping, and whatever comes out of the National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity. We also have Derek Hayes in that team as well, who's leading up or contributing to an open space strategy and tree and vegetation strategy as well. We have a strategic transport lead, which is Andrew Maisie. He's got involved in all sorts of pies, largely Greater Christchurch Transport Plan,
mass rapid transit planning, PT futures, walking cycling plan, and a whole range of other things. We have a sustainability lead as well, Keith Talentire. So he's doing a lot of sustainability, climate change awareness work. Also looking at inventories of what our current position is as a district and as a council on climate change emissions. And that'll be subject to a staff meeting survey, I think, in the next few weeks. There's also a future sustainability, climate change mitigation, adaptation plan or policy work, which will be going to council soon as well. We have a strategic water lead, which is vacant. This person would be largely responsible for liaising with a new water entity on our spatial planning, where growth should go, what it should look like. We also have urban design, Gabi Wolfer, who's principally responsible for designing the urban design guidelines. So that will be with council this year as well, and a little input into various policy and consent processes as well. So I guess that's a bit about what all the teams are up to. Any questions on any of that?
No questions, thanks. So thank you, Bob. Look, I was going to have Emma here. Emma Larson is the head of resource consents, but unfortunately, Emma has a nasty head cold, which she probably caught from me last week, so she's unable to be here. So we'll take the opportunity next committee meeting for her to introduce herself. The rest of my report, I'll just move through and take questions at the end, if that's okay. The next one on number 3, the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan Future Selwyn Engagement Update. As Bob said, we've entered into an engagement phase for the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan, and that's rolling out, and I've just included a bit of detail about that, and I know that councillors would have received information pack about that, I think, end of last week. I think the point to note is that we'll be using this platform for engaging around Future Selwyn to try and gather some local considerations about how that might roll out. No doubt there'll be gaps in that piece of information that we'll have to fill in through further engagement before we go out for formal consultation. The next item is on the local alcohol policy. This falls in Sue's area, and it's really just tidying up some panel members. So there was a presentation back in August of last year that we talked about the local alcohol policy, and councillors Lemon, Glidden and Dean were indicated to be involved in the panel. Now, obviously, Mr. Lemon is no longer part of the council, so we're just looking to get a nominee for that panel. So that's part of the recommendations. Yeah, I mean, we can either skip that or just confirm the existing members that were identified back in August. The next item is around the Selwyn Biodiversity Strategy and the Tauriri Ko Tuku Wetland Yas Lagoon update. And again, this is really just for your information. And also tidying up the absence of Mr. Lemon, who was placed on the steering group. So we need an alternative option for that, or I guess we could just run with having Councillor Malcolm Weil, that's in the last paragraph, page 129 of your agenda, as the council representative on that group. And in terms of the Tauriri Ko Tuku Wetland Group, again, that's for your information, but Mr. Murray Lemon, who was a very busy former councillor, was also part of that wetland care group and needs to be replaced on it. So that's part of the recommendations as well. At point 6, I just worked through some of the flavour of the reports that will be coming to this committee over the forthcoming year. A lot of that stuff will be coming out of the strategy and policy team. You just heard from Bob about some of the main points from that. We've got Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan, Mass Rapid Transport, Future Selwyn. The biodiversity team will have a few key reports coming to this council, and then very importantly, we'll have decisions on the variations and the proposed district plan later in the year. And then also there'll be a number of procedural reports around private plan changes, designations, and the like. The regulatory team will be involved in a number of by law reviews, not least of which will be the animal control bylaw and the local alcohol policy. And there will be information reports and bits and bobs coming from the building area and the resource consent area as we move through the year. But what I intended was to bring a full work program to the next committee member, with a caveat that the work program, because it's driven largely by statutory processes, can move around a wee bit, so it'll be indicative, but I'll try and map that out for you at the next committee meeting. From time to time, I think these meetings may be fairly light on the agenda, and I'd like to think that we can take the opportunity to workshop various issues.
That's a good idea.
Just on that point, and I forgot to mention under section 5, the biodiversity area, the second paragraph there. At the next meeting, we'd like to workshop the Selwyn biodiversity strategy with a formal report coming to May. So that's just in that section 5 of your report. I think that's all I needed to cover off. So to go back to the recommendations, which you see there, the first one receives the group manager's report, and the next 3 are around just tidying up the membership of the local alcohol policy hearing and those biodiversity groups that Mr. Murray Lemon was a part of in the last term of council.
So people who put their hands up, are they interested in just discussing the items, or they're actually talking about these names that are wanting to come up for these positions? Shane, you were the first one on the list.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to move the report.
Okay.
And yes, I would like a bit more discussion on perhaps LAP, local alcohol policy hearing, what that further entails, and also to put my name forward in replace of Murray Lemon to be a part of that. So if there's any feedback on the purpose of that local alcohol policy hearing, maybe a bit more on that. I do understand that there's seek amendment to allow a more community perspective. And although I think that's fantastic, I do believe that in general it's a bit of a broad brush approach to focus on the distribution rather than the education of those that are using it. So while that's to be part of the hearing, I hope that you can perhaps somebody can give me more on that.
So just before we go further with talking about what is actually already in this report is that councillors Glidden and Dean are already on it, and you two are quite happy to stay on this, Mike. You are as well, Lydia. Just to be clear before we start, because it's only I was going to say Councillor Lemon, but Murray now who's the one to be replaced, as opposed to completely changing the names that we've got there. If you two are quite happy, because we've already passed that before. Thank you. So are there others who are interested in being on this panel, other than Shane has raised his hand? Well, you are interested.
Madam Chair, I think the idea was one from each ward. That's why so Springs, Ellesmere and Melbourne has already a representative. Was to do with having the Ellesmere representative.
So we've got 3, but we've only got 3 appointments. If we're saying one from each ward, so are we able to do 4 then?
I don't see any reason why we can't have 4 unless there's no, I don't think there's any impediment to have 4.
Oh, but Bob and Lydia are in the same ward. Are you sure?
I don't know.
I support Councillor Epiar. Good, Rob.
Thank you, Councillor Lyle. Okay, so Bob, you have backed out.
Yeah.
Now, was there any?
Yeah.
There doesn't have to be one from each. area, but that's a suggestion.
When we decided that's rationale. That's one thing. So it should be either a month or really based on.
And then who's going to come from Springs?
Springs is though, it's only, no, Lyle was for
And I have,
any other biodiversity strategy project group.
yeah, I work within the alcohol industry from time to time, so I think I could be accused of having a conflict.
And councillor Hassan has a conflict in that area, I would think, being a,
So that was like.
is it 3 or 4 reps now?
I'm not sure whether there needs to be, I mean, I'm a licensee. I have a liquor license, but I don't see that is a conflict of interest.
No, but certainly councillor Hassan has,
I would
she's,
raise that as a,
she's involved.
so the
with-
committee knows. I guess maybe I could jump ahead again, sorry, because we're talking about this subject, is that I've worked on the LAP for Christchurch City Council. And when it was being first rebuilt, I was also the Christchurch City alcohol person. So I'm not kind of the right person to be there, but I do have a liquor license in Selwyn. So I guess
It's a bar.
Yeah.
it's not a bar, it's a cafe.
Yes.
It's to sell wine and beer. So, yep.
My advice would be for you to make that pretty clear at the beginning of the hearing, your position. We might take a bit of further advice on that as well, just to make sure that we aren't going to get ourselves tied up. I think there could be a perception of bias if you are a licensee. So I think let me take some further advice and come back to you. I don't think that stops us making a resolution today with your name on it, but if we get some information that perhaps we need to rethink, we can go back and do that. So that would be my advice.
So councillor Miller, if you're staying on, that gives us 4 in case we need to change to 3 later down the track. Are you happy with that? Yes, thank you. Next one is for the biodiversity strategy project steering group. So councillor Lyle is already on that, and the option was to just have councillor Lyle or an additional person to replace. Was there confusion?
I'm on the Te Reo here.
Oh, so there's confusion there.
But I do think we do need 2 people on it, and
Okay,
because if I'm not available, so I get very busy in the deputy mayor role, and I would very much support Sophie being the nominee for that role.
do you accept that nomination, councillor McInnes?
I am definitely interested, but I was going to ask, does anybody know when the meetings are, just so that I can check that it's actually something I'm available for?
I think they're scheduled on an as needs basis.
Okay.
So just to be clear, Madam Chair, I had you down here as part of the Selwyn Biodiversity Strategy Group.
That was councillor Lyle.
That
Yeah.
was my advice, but I may have got that wrong. You're not on it, is that, Mr. Be clear?
Don't think I am.
Because I was under the understanding that maybe Murray was the only one on it, but I didn't know.
I apologise to the committee, I got that wrong.
It's confusion here.
I'm sorry, I did indicate that I was willing to take that role,
Okay.
but on reflection, depending on what happens later this year with roles that the mayor's looking to undertake, my workload is going to get higher.
So it looks like we're just looking for a replacement for Mr. Lemon on the Selwyn Biodiversity Strategy Steering Group. And then also another nomination for the Tariri Kotuku Wetland Care Group.
But you're happy to stay on that,
Yes, I'm happy to
stay on that, but we need an additional one for that. Okay.
Yeah, it's a nice award.
So so we're staying on C. So there's been a nomination for councillor McInnes. Is there anyone else who's interested in being on that? And then we'd have to have a vote.
So
if there
C
was-
was a replacement of Maureen Lehman, so I think the Burton McInnes is doing it. Okay.
Well, she is down. Sorry, Elizabeth, you.
I was gonna say, the Tarariki Tuku one is Ellesmere Ward, correct?
No idea. Sorry, but I would think probably it is.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm wondering whether Shane and I will possibly be interested. Are you interested in it, Shane?
This district council.
If not,
Madam Chair. It's at your discretion, councillor.
Well, I mean, we've got too many people. Because we have good regular group from Malcolm. Never got Elizabeth, so there's no. So for right now, we've got one. Sorry, this is getting slightly confusing. We've got one person that we've as a representative on the Tarariki Tuku, which is Malcolm Lyle. Malcolm suggested that it might be warranted for another person to join.
Yeah.
So currently I've got three names potentially. Lydia, Elizabeth, and Shane. We only need one at the most. So
Lydia, you were just for the local alcohol one, weren't you?
okay, so I'm just got it wrong then. So
And then Shane, Elizabeth suggested that maybe you would be interested. So maybe it's just Elizabeth that's interested. I don't know.
Okay.
Can we just stay with the C? I just want to get that finished. So Councillor McInnes has put her hand up. Was there anyone else who was interested? If there's not, then I think we only need, we only need one from what we can work out. So we only appoint one at this stage, but if we need an additional person, we will do that at a later meeting. I think it's the best idea. So if we're happy with that, so we've resolved that Councillor McInnes will be for the Selwyn Biodiversity Strategy Group. And so we now go to D. So we can have want to have two people. So Elizabeth, you are interested. Is there anyone else who's interested?
I nominate, Madam Chair, Elizabeth, councillor.
I think that as it's a major biodiversity issue at the lagoon, that it would perhaps be more seamless if Councillor McInnes was there, because she is the working with biodiversity strategy. So I think there's a very good connection through there.
And she's also on the Selwyn Waihoa Zone Committee as well, and has.
Yeah, so I think that there'll be a very good cross-pollination of also.
Councillor McInnes, do you accept that or not?
I'm happy to do it. I'm just wary of stepping on toes.
Is there anyone's toes that she would be stepping on who, if you raise your issues now or forever hold your peace? No toes stood on. So I think that's changed all those. So can I have a mover so we're doing all of those together? Mover Shane, seconder Bob, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. And I think that's coming to the end of our meeting. So you all.
Shane raised with the LAP. Shane, did you want some information on the LAP? Did you want discussion here about that, or was that something?
With the work plan at a later date.
Okay, that's fine.
Happy with that.
Okay, thank you. So you've all got one of these. Karakia, we can all say it together. Sorry, Grant.
Sorry, I thought we were going to come back to the report after the election. I was going to raise an issue on item 3.
Right. We haven't discussed the report, so we will do that.
Item 3 around the spatial plan, particularly item B around the awareness of MRT. Question perhaps for you, Tim, I suppose, is or the GCP members, what is our requirement to sort of toe the GCP line on the MRT route or corridor? Because from a Selwyn perspective, I know it's a staged approach, but stopping in Hornby and Belfast as currently planned seems not to be in the spirit of long-term infrastructure, which is going to be fit for purpose for growing communities. And I'm of a mind to sort of put my point of view, but I'm also aware that we are members of the GCP that have sort of voted to sort of say this is the way forward. So I guess I'm asking for a bit of advice about whether that's still within our remit to do that, particularly around corridor designations. And we've said for a long time in Selwyn that the green space for providing corridors for MRT and for transport hubs is rapidly being gobbled up, and the inertia or lack of designations is causing a real problem. So if you're able to provide advice on that, it would be helpful.
Yes, I guess it's a complex planning process. We're part of the Greater Christchurch partnership, but we're also part of the government's growth partnership as well, in terms of we're signed up for. The MRT is being driven by Waka Kotahi. This is moving towards an indicative business case that's going to land in May, then it goes through another planning phase after that, another business case proposal after that. So it's a number of years away. One of the key drivers for that is making it viable from a financial point of view. And it was pretty clear from all the work that Waka Kotahi and council staff have been doing is that it's we're talking multi-generational, multi-billion-dollar investment over time. And the plan is, as you'll be aware, Grant, that to get it going, get some momentum, it needs to start somewhere that it's going to actually be viable to do. And coming out from the central city out towards Hornby is the only sort of viable option at this point. And the plan is then that we'd have an enhanced public transport process coming from Rolleston to Hornby, so it would be along the existing motorway corridor. So in many ways, I can't give you a sort of. I mean, it's look, these conversations need to be had. They have been had, and if you want to repeat them, that's fine. But in terms of something that's pragmatic, as a way of getting some momentum in mass rapid transport, the way that's been couched seems to me to be something that would be able to at least be feasible and gather some momentum.
Yeah, what of all that. I suppose you might be sort of, I'm misconstruing my point. I suppose is my view is that long-term infrastructure should be dictated by planning for the future rather than the dollars in today's. You've got to plan for the future. I think just the short-sightedness seems to be. I get that it's about dollars and bums on seats, but it's really talking about today's and what's in front of us. And what we've seen here in Rolleston particularly is none of us who are longer-term councillors, even in our wildest dreams, we've never predicted the amount of growth that we've seen here in the short period of time that's happened. And I think we're selling Selwyn and particularly Rolleston short and not batting a bit harder, I suppose.
This probably is worthy of future discussions in terms of a workshop to progress. These views have been aired with the Greater Christchurch Partnership.
Sort of getting at is, Malcolm, I think your GCP, is it? Are we required to toe the line on this, or is it?
Can I comment? Yeah, Grant. Both the mayor and myself in the previous year spoke out around the route that was being taken and being suggested. We did favour a route that comes out, if you like, somewhere through Selwyn Road, because we see that the growth of Lincoln, the growth of Prebleton, the growth of Rolleston, Lincoln's going to have 15,000 or 18,000 people in it in no time, and the plan changes that have gone through in Prebleton in the recent months will put our population up to about 10,000. So to be able to have a mass rapid transit that's easily accessible by those larger community nodes is quite important. We've expressed that in multiple times on that committee. I'm no longer on that committee. That's all right. But to 16 years. But as Tim has said, it was very much done on an economic basis and taking it to Hornby in the first instance. I believe that we do need a corridor put aside. Whatever we do, we need a corridor there that can be put, can have whatever form of transit is the best at the time that is available to us. So I'm unhappy as well, but I think this is a first step. And we do have the cabinet involved in this decision making as well for mass rapid transit, and getting it over the line is very important. And I believe there will be an announcement on Friday by the minister on something to do with this. So we have certainly made that known, and I think we need to take any opportunity to the future to express those views again.
Councillor McInnes, do you like to say something?
Oh, well, Shane's got his light on as well. What is your?
Sorry, Shane, you're on top of me. You're above me. Yeah, Shane.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. Given the name of the committee, planning and climate change, I was surprised to see that, and thankful that you have sent through the documents regarding our draft policy on climate change, and it's really good work of myself and Sophie that we got that through. So I was just maybe for future work, and you've already mentioned it, that becomes a benchmark, and I noticed that it still is the draft policy due for sign off.
Sorry, stop you there. The might not have been clear. This was actually an approved policy that council did in 2020. So it is not draft. It's actually an adopted policy, and it's been 2 years since it was adopted. So there's going to have to be a review, and that's how we've done it. Okay. So if there's been some issues, we clarify correctly, but that is the situation. I hope that answers.
It does. It's the heading of it is draft, and when you go to the website, it still says draft. So thank you.
So obviously an error with that. But if you look at the minutes from that meeting, it's definitely was passed, and it is an official policy. But those are things that obviously will need to be tidied up.
That wasn't really my question. It was just around the benchmark of it then and the work to now, and perhaps that forms also part of the reporting back as to how we've decreased our carbon footprint, where we are with our vehicle fleet decarbonisation. So we're still looking for that information as we progress, really just the benchmark and where we're currently at moving forward. Thank you.
It was part of our overarching work program, so it is also part of our future Selwyn in terms of really integrating climate change and these issues right throughout all of council's strategy, and not just a standalone policy. But yes, there'll be more discussion over that over the next months.
Councillor McInnes.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to Councillor Miller's point around why the MRT proposal does not currently go further than Hornby in terms of the west of Christchurch. And I guess the biggest reason, yes, been trying to push for it to at least have a proposed route further west, but there are whole swathes of Christchurch that aren't covered by MRT either. There's a large sector of the population that isn't going to get, that's going to have to hook in through public transport or other means. And we're kind of in that boat as well. And a good portion of that is because our townships are far too low density to sustain MRT at the moment, and our public transport usership is far too low to sustain the investment required to put MRT out here. So that's why things like the Future Selwyn work and everything else, and actually intensifying, and which I know is an unpopular view with a lot of people, but just generally, if you want MRT out here, that is what is going to be what's required. Thanks.
Councillor Dean.
Yeah, she was going to move off the report and just talk about briefing at midday, but I can do it at the very end before you close.
We're still. Was there anything more to discuss on this report? Yeah, that'll be, but we'll need to move into that. So what we'll do is So you've all got, how I said, we'll do a closing karakia now. You should have a copy of this and we can all say it together. Ini here, tipo, tipo, kia waita, re, kua, waita. So remove, uplift the posts in order to be free. Yes, it has been cleared. So we moved out of the public portion of the meeting. Thank you. So, end.